Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ali Thompson from Hay Legal. Thanks for joining me today on our first Hay Legal Lunch and Learn. So we're always keen to try out different formats, and we thought there might be a route for people being keen to just drop in and get some information that's going to help move their law firm forward. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Chris O'Day, CEO of the Cash Room, and Grant Ewell, Head of Marketing and Customer Engagement at De Novo. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Ali. And thank you for having us on this morning, or this afternoon, in the UK.
Well, that's good that you say this morning, Chris, because for you it is this morning. And this is a very interesting development that you're joining us from the States this morning.
I am, yes. So I'm actually out in Nebraska right now. We are in the process of carrying out a bit of market research at the Cash Room, really just looking to explore whether the US is a market for the services we provide. So I've been out here for a couple of weeks, which is great.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure it's better than rainy Glasgow, which I think myself and Grant are stuck
with. Not quite as glamorous. The patter of rain on the canal outside our office is not...
Yeah. I need to get some plans for international expansion into the diary swiftly.
Well,
so listen,
it sounds glamorous, Ali, but in actual fact, last week it was 39 degrees at one point, and with my complexion, I tell you, it's indoors as much as it is in Glasgow.
Yeah, I'd like to try a few days of 39 degrees, mind you, it would be good, but I understand entirely. So today we're going to talk tech trends in law firms post-pandemic. I'm not saying the pandemic is over, but clearly working practices have changed. People are now back in the office, they're adopting hybrid models. Technology has been rapidly adopted during the pandemic. And I thought it was really interesting to have you both as guests because you both have the benefit of working with multiple firms, working across the entire sector, multiple disciplines, and you're also now in different territories. And you have an advantage over lawyers who tend to sometimes work in their own working environment. They're not really sure what is happening in other firms or across the sector generally. So any trends that you've identified that you see being accelerated or anything that you see coming up in the future? So Chris, would you like to start just with some general thoughts, please?
Yeah, I think generally with the big thing that we are seeing is that across the sector, everyone is really looking to adapt and improve their technology stack that they're using. And really that comes from, at Cash Room, we always talk about three main pillars being compliance, risk reduction, and efficiency. And for me, the use of technology helps in all of those areas in its own way. And I'm a big believer in a piece of data should only ever be entered once, and that should become the source of truth ultimately. And then it's important that that piece of data just flows through the relevant systems that are being used, because the more times that a piece of data is handled, manipulated, the more risk there is that a number is going to be transposed, that something's going to be changed, something's going to be done wrong. And also every sort of control that you build into that process almost becomes redundant every time you remove that piece of data from a system and do something with it manually. Not to mention the efficiency losses there, because at the end of the day, data in the world we live in now, systems just allow data to flow. And the more you allow that to happen, the less human interaction you need to have in that. It frees the human up to do the real value add work, whether that be the fee earner, a partner, the finance department, whatever it is, it really improves that efficiency across the board. And that's really what we're seeing is, for me, the pandemic didn't really change anything in terms of adoption and technology being available. All it done is it gave that burning platform that forced people to start using it, because a lot of the technology has always been there. It's just the uptake that's been lagging. And really, the pandemic forced that to happen in one swift sort of take back in April 2020 now. And the key thing for me is that it's almost shifted that mindset that people are now open to trying new things and looking at new technology as that starts advancing.
Yeah.
Do you think you're seeing more senior leadership having that mindset, that they're much more open now to tech adoption, or using what they had? Because we've got the concept of shelfware, where they had this was available, the technology, but it just wasn't being used or adopted.
Yeah, I think so. I think across the board, I think everyone is really adapting that mindset and being much more open to it. Now, of course, some more than others, and some at different speeds than others. But as I said, the pandemic, if you think back to April 20, and suddenly everyone was on Zoom calls and Teams calls every single night with their friends and family and so on. And even just things like that have forced them to rethink the business experience and the way that things can actually work from whether it be a remote perspective or a hybrid perspective, etc. So yeah, absolutely. I think the leadership are, and I think firms where leadership aren't willing to adopt that are the ones that are actually going to struggle, because the other firms that are willing to adopt that technology are going to be able to provide a service to the end user and to the consumer that surpasses that can be delivered by firms that aren't making best use of technology that's available.
Yeah. So it's tech adoption, but it's also cultural as well, isn't it? Where you have to start to drive it from the top of the firm to make sure that people do use this, fully embrace the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grant, bring you in this point.
Yeah, I think I would echo that, absolutely. I think first and foremost, a lot of law firms were maybe asking themselves, what is it going to take to be a sort of successful lawyer in 2022? We were all kind of grappling with the short and long-term effects of the pandemic, maybe not aware of, what the consequences might be. But I think, Chris, you are right that, it's not that the technology wasn't there. It's just that, sort of out of a tragic situation, you could say that the positive is that law firms possibly dragged themselves a little bit into accelerating tech adoption. We all needed to act fast. And at the time, and still to this day, it's become more crucial than ever to kind of stay up to date with now what the technology trends are. And I think that's, where law firms probably needed a little bit more education as to what was probably available to them. I think that's why platforms actually like Hey Legal and something like the Shaping Your Success channel that you've launched, Ali, with the Law Society of Scotland. I think that's been really important, because they're giving the likes of myself, Chris, yourself, Ali, the opportunity to speak to quite large numbers of lawyers in quite a relaxed forum and simply give a bit of advice about how things, what can help and how you can move the needle just a little bit faster. But I mean, for me, genuine, and from conversations that we've had, you rightly mentioned, Ali, we're interacting with lawyers and their support staff every single day of the week. And I actually think that one of the biggest tech trends has been and probably should continue to be that lawyers have just become a bit more comfortable with advanced tech. At the end of the day, it is just technology. If you take, our software, for example, it's built specifically to help, right? So the most important trend probably for us is definitely been law firms learning to get the most out of the tools that they probably already have. Because of the pandemic, most firms probably are perhaps struggling to recover kind of economically for a period of time. So firms are looking for ways to do more with less, and many did look to make changes. Might have been the likes of their case management system. They wanted something a bit more intuitive, but they might have turned to new tools. But new expenses and things didn't really make sense at that time. We found that firms are, finally, I suppose, learning to get more value from those tools that they already have. And for a lot of our clients, it was about, say, upgrading to the newest version of the, cloud-based system, which which was free of charge. So there was a cost implication, but there was a learning required in that. And I think in maybe years gone by, there was a hesitancy to maybe push that forward. And perhaps the pandemic gave them a little bit more time to do that. But it was definitely a bit of belt tightening, a bit of a belt tightening response at the time that hopefully prompted an interest in learning and training, with any sort of technology, even simple things like Microsoft Word, So yeah, that's definitely something that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously things like, Chris, you'll know this in particular, but outsourcing for a long time was just something that was a cultural leap really for many law firms. Outsourcing something, especially like the cash room, was something that many firms are not prepared to consider. And then obviously being cloud-based, Grant, as well, with adoption of cloud-based technology again, a lot of reasons not to look at that type of thing. But then the pandemic obviously brings all of that clearly into focus. I think, so going forward on a practical level, when you've gone into law firms now or speaking to law firm leaders, are you seeing anything different? I think there's been talk of maybe new business teams for inquiries, or have working practices changed in any way that you could outline? What could someone who's maybe feeling that their firm is possibly not pushing forward, what could they learn from you just now about what they maybe would like to consider implementing? Grant, maybe you could come in on that just now.
Yeah,
please.
No worries. Yeah, but I mean, we've definitely seen changes in attitudes around our product, for example. But you mentioned something about new business teams, and that was quite interesting for me because we've seen a large number of the law firms that we work with, increasing the investment in solutions or resources that can still provide the human touch to assist with things like their overall client experience. So many law firms we speak to, they've been sort of like gearing up and restructuring their business. And the trend what we were seeing is the introduction of or the expansion of new business teams. That seems to be business critical now for a lot of firms, particularly SME firms who maybe in the past didn't have a focus on that. We've heard so many law firms talking about this, and many are now adopting a new dedicated new business team to enhance the structure of their sales process, for example. So primarily because the importance of now tracking their marketing spend, conversion values, that can't be underestimated now. And firms are now becoming really laser focused on not only driving new business, but improving communication, analysing their client data to ensure that they can retain them. Yep. I think we'll see that expand more as we move into 2023. As firms become more financially stable. And, of course, solicitors can't work 24/7, 7 days a week, but websites, software systems, they can. So identifying the right tech that can be there for their clients when they can't be, that's going to be a critical factor in improving the overall. And I'll talk about this all day, but the client experience is the most important part of the business in terms of being able to retain clients. So, but it'll also determine who survives and thrives over the coming years, to be honest.
You'll be the leader. And Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, and that's absolutely one area where you're seeing firms start to adapt is the lead management and the sales function that traditionally a law firm has always operated, where the partners, fee earners effectively need to go out and business develop. And I think there's starting to see a shift where it's about playing to people's strengths and having the best people doing the best tasks. And that's you also mentioned the opportunity to outsource. And again, talking personally from the cash room, there has been a shift in that, and that's been good for us through that sort of mindset shift as part of the move to remote working and so on. We were already delivering our services remotely to over 150 clients going into the pandemic. So we we knew and we had proved that could work, and you didn't need your cashiering function in the building beside you. But it was still helpful when the world had to go fully remote, that people were able to see, okay, there's absolutely no reason that I need to have that function fully in my office beside me. We can have processes and systems that make that work. But that's an extension of the right people and experts doing critical functions within a firm. And we see that within the sort of lead management sales function, as Grant talked about. Also things like outsourcing of web development and search engine optimization and things like that, and how important that's becoming, particularly in the world of Google reviews and things like that, where firms need to make sure that their web presence is absolutely critical. Because I don't know the stats, but in actual fact, in days gone by, it was the shop front that was quite often the most important sort of marketing tool, whereas now everything's on Google. That's generally where everyone goes when they have a need, and it's critical that firms are appearing on that first page of Google, and even probably higher than that, the first 3 or 4 hits on Google. And therefore, it's really important to be having experts that can get them there, because it's really pretty complicated stuff when it comes to the search engine optimization and things that lawyers, accountants aren't trained to do. So pass that on to experts. The other thing that we're seeing in terms of trends is about things like AML and the automating of that process, where it can be fully tech driven to an extent, and it's also about customer experience, as you talked about. I absolutely agree with that, and I think more and more customers are coming to expect that they can be sat at 8 o'clock at night and do what they need to do, rather than needing to find an hour out of their day to go and visit their lawyer or etc. And tech solutions, as you say, I absolutely agree, that gives that client consumer the opportunity to do it in their own time and do what they need to do when it's convenient to them, rather than being constrained by the 9 to 5 working day. So that's another trend that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I just to jump in here, I think I absolutely spot on. This goes back to, again, something I talk about quite regularly, but any technology that's going to make the client experience more convenient, seamless, transparent, it's up there with the top trends. It has to be. Consumers are, you're talking about they're sitting at 8 o'clock at night and being able to interact with a brand or a business. Consumers are choosing convenient experiences through companies like, say, Uber, Amazon, Shopify, etc. Fill in the blank. That's what millennials and Gen Z clients want. Their expectation of how they interact with every type of business is dictated by the evolution of technology, right? So law firms who maybe don't recognise that businesses out of the legal world are now their competition when it comes to client experience, I think they're being a little bit short-sighted. This is not a snipe at anyone. This is just, I think it's just reality. It's the truth. The ones that recognise this and heed advice, for their existing clients or definitely their future clients, that's the expectation that they will have. So the ones who recognise that they're going to be the ones who succeed. The ones that don't, will fall behind. I would say.
Yeah. Well, very interesting times. I'm just going to play a short video message from the Law Society, and we'll return to this theme, if that is okay. I'm just going to make sure I'm playing the right video. Here we go.
This year's Sole Practitioner and High Street Firm Conference is designed to provide you with essential practice updates, key insights, and of course, a forum for questions and discussions. Join us across 2 mornings to hear from our panel of leading Seoul and High Street experts and to connect and network with your peers. For more information and to book your place, please visit our website.
Okay, gents, thanks for that. In terms of what you've just been talking about there, I do find all of this genuinely fascinating, and I think it's a challenge for the traditional model of law firm leadership, because not so long ago, adopting technology was for certain types of people. It's like, oh, I've got a law firm, but I like technology, and it wasn't really something, a skill set or an area that most lawyers really thought too much about. Same with I think things like digital marketing and that type of thing as well. It's like, well, I don't really know much about it. And when you said there, Chris, about AML becoming a tech-driven solution, it does show you how much that the vision of these businesses is having to change, because it's having to now understand, as you say, it's now having to understand practical use of technology, modern marketing, digital marketing, media creation around content for Google, being visible to clients, being available at 8 o'clock at night, very different models to what's traditionally been there. Do you think that the law firms need to kind of reimagine what they are? Chris,
yeah, I think like any business, they need to constantly innovate and make sure they're constantly challenging the status quo, ultimately, because we've seen across history businesses that fail to do that and feel that they've got themselves into a dominant position within an industry. And you look at there's the stories of Blockbuster refusing to buy Netflix, etc., back in the day, because no, that'll never catch on. And there's lessons throughout history of businesses and industries like that, where unless you constantly innovate, other businesses will come along in that industry and will just surpass you, and you're then going to really struggle to catch up once that change has happened. So it's, to me, it's much better to constantly be aware of what's going on out there and being part of that sort of fairly early wave of adoption and making sure you're not being left behind. And I think that's a challenge for every industry, not just law firms, but law firms certainly aren't exempt from it.
I think that goes that I would take that back to my initial point about education as well, Chris, because quite a good example of a conversation. It's about really understanding what is out there. Almost before it's too late. We had a client who came in to see us, who was using a kind of older version of our software, and came in raving about it. It's fantastic. And he actually said to myself and my colleague, when we sat down, he went, "Guys, listen, everything's great. There's nothing that you can do that's going to improve my efficiency or can help me anymore. There can't be another way." I mean, this is genuinely a conversation that we had. And, we then started getting into the conversation about like the likes of automation and different things that they can do, and then started to show them what could be done. By the end of say we're there for 45 minutes, by the end of the 45 minutes, his sort of mind's blown, and, he's looking at these different features and things that you can do that are all relatively simple once you understand how to use them. I mean, and he's going, "Oh, this is a game changer for us." I'm going, but 45 minutes prior to that, his world was complete and everything was fine. But the efficiencies and the understanding of what is out there, we need platforms like this to be able to have these conversations and be able to communicate in this way, because we're not going to go knocking down the door, going right. It's not, it's not the 80s, here's something that's great, we're trying to sell it to you. We need to have these conversations so that everybody understands what is available to them, and then be able to interact and say, well, if it doesn't do exactly what you need it to do right now, what's your dream? what do you really, what do you really need? Once those conversations start to flow, I think that we start to innovate together collaboratively, rather than just providing a solution and going, that's what we think, that's what you need. That's not the way to go about it,
No, I think that. Sorry, I think you're absolutely right on the education piece, and it's a really important point that people don't not use technology because they just refuse to do it. It's often, as you say, Grant, it's about understanding the value that it's going to add, and often it's they don't have the time to go in and explore it, and it's about stepping away from the day job to invest that time, because the long-term gain is going to be massive. And the other thing that I often talk about is looking at any technology solution on a holistic nature. And we often have seen people where they won't change practice management system because the cashier knows the system they're working on, and it's going to be a hassle for them. Or there might be that there's an option to change to a system, but it will add, let's say, 20% efficiency to one department, but it might actually reduce efficiency by 5% in another department.
Sure.
And therefore, people often find blockers and reasons not to do something. But in actual fact, on that example, let's say it was a department of 2 departments of 10 people. If there's 20% gains for 10 and 5% loss for the other department, as a business, there's a 15% gain there. So it's a no-brainer to do it. But in actual fact, people often then use that inefficiency in one area as a reason, well, we can't do that because it's going to negatively impact this piece over there, rather than looking at big picture and saying, well, that's fine, but we're all one team, we're one business, that therefore we need to do what benefits the whole rather than the individual function. And again, that's a big failing that I see across the sector when it comes to choosing solutions, because people aren't necessarily taking that big picture view and looking at it holistically enough.
I think it can be. I agree entirely with everything that you've both said there. It can be difficult, obviously, in busy environments, as you said earlier, Chris, about it's lawyers running law firms, and it's very difficult to be strategic when you're exceptionally busy dealing with clients. But the opportunity lies in engaging the relevant experts, outsourcing what you can, bringing the right people into the team, and there's a real skill in relation to that, selecting the right people to work with, and then you're able to take strategic decisions. And I do think around alternative business structures where different skill sets come into the management team and are able to then say, I can either do this or I know the route we should go down. But clearly, what we've been talking about here is, it does show ultimately the opportunity that's out there for law firms now to really reimagine their working practices. It's what their staff want, it's what their customers want. It is technology as an enabler, and it's very much the case that this is an opportunity for them now to basically make sure that their services are very relevant and they've got a strong future going forward. I can't believe that we've actually reached 30 minutes already. I feel as though we've barely skimmed the surface of what we were starting to talk about, but I'm conscious that we try to say 20 to 30 minutes for a lunchtime audience to drop into. So is there one thing that you'd like to finish on, each of you, to say just one perhaps key point that you'd like to make before we wrap things up?
The big thing for me, I think, when it comes to legal trends is free up the time to go and explore what's out there, because the time that you invest in it will repay itself easily and generally very quickly.
Great point. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And I suppose our job is to not really try and get lawyers to understand necessarily what's under the bonnet of the technology that we're talking about, or that we're trying to provide them with. We're just here to help them understand not only how things like automation and technology can or outsource or any of these things can create, they can create value for the business, but also how the unique combination of technology and human ingenuity really, can play a massive part in transforming your business in a way that works to benefit everyone, really.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you both so much. Interesting times, certainly in the tech sector and in the legal sector and in work generally. Everything's been reimagined. So the pace of change is only going to get quicker, not slower, as we well know. So interesting times lie ahead. Chris, I hope that the rest of your, I said visit to the States, but working time in the States isn't too warm and is a successful venture for you. Wish you every success with the cash room in that new territory. Sounds really exciting. And Grant, obviously continued good luck with De Novo. Thank you both very much for joining me. And I hopefully will be able to catch up on these topics again sometime soon, because I think it is something that people are very keen to know more about. So thank you both for taking the time.
Thanks.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Alex.
Cheers now.